you very much, Mark. Well, now we've got Dr. Ricardo Bieboking. He is a tech and innovation management consultant. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
Well, the earlier clip they saw there talking about Nigeria not signing. We've seen signs that after Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. But the thing about that is it's a huge one. That's for a market of about 1.2 billion people. Sure. With a GDP of, they say, 2.5 trillion naira for 55 African countries. So that's massive. Yeah. I know there's been some concern about how Nigeria can leverage what we can do to benefit. How do you suggest we maximize this agreement?
I think to maximize our position in AfCFTA, we have to look at it on two fronts. What we need to do in the continent-wise in terms of with the other African countries in negotiating a good deal for Nigeria, and also what we need to do at home. In negotiating more with the African continent, I think, first of all, we have to look at the danger, first of all, of foreign direct investment, hijacking this our plan, because they are the elephant in the room, which nobody is actually looking at. If a big player from outside the African continent walks in and he has more funds than all these chambers of commerce that we are trying to put together, then you could have our plan being hijacked. I
thought there are methods.
So that's why I say, first of yeah, but if he's in Africa, if his plant is in Africa, you can't. So you have to. I think we have to first of all set a moratorium, a particular number of years, so that African companies manufacturing will be able to build capacity. So if we have maybe like a 10-year period or a 5-year period where when the agreement is on, so African countries can build capacity to compete.
Is that going to be on a country-by-country basis, because they're all at different stages of development?
Yeah, so that's why you give a general period and say, yes, if FDI flows in, this FDI is going to be localized to the country that it went to. So if, for example, somebody comes into Nigeria, he works for the Nigerian market. That way you protect somebody coming and just setting shop beside Nigeria. He wants the Nigerian market, but he's in another small country and he blows up the whole place. So we can use that for the first time where we are trying to build capacity to, yes, FDI will come in, but at the same time, it will not be in direct competition with African countries that are companies that are trying to build capacity.
But how has that worked in the light of the sub-regional, economic bloc? I mean, ECOWAS had such, a plan before, the economic community, as it were. How has that worked? In which area do you think this FDA has affected that one, that it could be injurious to this CFTA?
Yeah, but you see, you're now looking at a bigger market, and it's more attractive now to outside players.
Yeah, but couldn't one say that this is a kind of template that's been on ground that one could just expand on?
You see, the market changes the dynamics, because you're talking now about 1.2 billion market. Yeah. It's very large for the people involved. So it's more attractive now for someone to say, okay, with what has happened in Africa now, I'm not dealing. And again, before you still had to deal maybe with certain countries. Now they can easily target a weaker country, get good breaks on that weak country, and come into the continent.
Do you think the African Union, in the build up to this plan, considered such influences in the build-up to this? Because, I mean, some people consider that, the French is still very, very powerful on their, former colonies, and America is still, playing its own role. And we have seen the massive work that, China is, the massive inroad that China is making into the African market at various levels. Do you think the African Union considered these?
That's why I'm saying, there's no, it's like when you say everybody, there's no, it's the individual countries. Like Nigeria should take a lead, because we're going to be affected. We need to be able to get our negotiating team that is going to negotiate and drive this agreement in a way that is beneficial to us and beneficial to other African countries. Because, like you're pointing out, it's almost going to be another, almost a big scramble for Africa, because the big names, they are watching. And they are just sitting back and seeing what you want to do, and they will choose where to come in.
In other words, there are weak links that need to be considered.
Yes, okay. That's one part of it. Then the other thing I think we as Nigeria could be looking at is there's going to be a period where already they're talking about currency, a single currency, and you're talking about currency convergence. It's going to take some time for all the African 55 countries to be able to get to satisfy the conditions for currency convergence. I think our team should be negotiating now that since the Naira is the most used currency in Africa, we have 200 million people using it.
So based on that population?
Yeah. So
convertible currency or not?
Yeah, I think we should be pushing that the Naira should be the currency for settling all trade under AfCFTA until a time when a single currency comes into place. I think we should be negotiating something like that.
What inhibition could come in that regard? Because, I mean, one of the things they would want to consider is, okay, which is the strongest currency in Africa?
No, that's why I said we should be looking. The Naira is the most used currency.
Not necessarily considered the strongest, but the most used.
We should be negotiating on our strengths.
Right.
That is our strength right now, and we have the biggest market. We need something out of this agreement also. So we should be negotiating that. These are things I think we should be doing on the continent. Then back home, I think we should be looking at how we can quickly do something about our power situation by maybe, the Siemens deal is good. Siemens is a reputable company. But I think we could look at leveraging it another way, because you see, if you go the conventional route, you might not be able to, you have to innovate a little bit to get out of a situation. So I think right now we should be looking at, first of all, we have about 13 states in the country right now that have generating stations based right there. I think the first thing, what we should be looking at is how to get those 13 states first off the national grid, whereby we change the configuration so that those states, first of all, satisfy themselves. And then the excess is pushed on the national grid. So even if we have the national grid currently at 4,000 meg or 5,000 gig, you find that it will be the excess that will be going there, because already we have installed capacity of about 13 gig. So 13 gigawatts is our installed capacity. So if we can get those 13 states off, that would give us a faster time, because if we have 13 states already having 24/7 power, that will help manufacturing in 13 states. Or I think there might be more. I think a minimum of 13 states have some generating capacity. So that will automatically give us a springboard that half of the country already has power.
All right. Now that you bring up the issue of power, the general topic is infrastructure. How ready are we, or how are we preparing ourselves to be competitive? I'll let you come in now. We have signed this agreement, but it has not been ratified by the National Assembly. I mean, a lot of people are saying, I mean, why is the headquarters in Ghana? But you see, Ghana was one of the very first countries to sign and ratify. It appeared as though they were ready to, latch onto this. So let's take a look at how ready Nigeria is. There's infrastructure on one hand, there's government policies on the other. I mean, we want to be competitive. We're talking about pushing the Naira as, the legal tender for this and for the time being. So we need to be as competitive as possible. So the question is, do we have that cutting edge? Are we prepared, as it were, right now?
That's why, as it is right now, I don't think we have really taken it that seriously about getting something tangible out of it, because yes, I think it has been announced that there's going to be a committee for the implementation. Yeah. But I think we need, as a country, to set the targets. It's not just going to the party and accepting whatever is given to us. We should be able to drive what we want. That's why I'm saying there are things, there are housekeeping we need to do at home, which I'm saying to get us a little bit competitive. But we also have to look at the government has to realize that when this agreement kicks off, even Nigerians will become like African citizens. So you must be looking at this whole thing as what is, the government has to see that is just take it as the only one fighting for what is good for Nigeria at that point.
There is another very interesting, dynamic here. You said the other time that Nigeria is the largest market, and by far, rightly so. Nigeria is the largest data user. Nigeria is the largest internet user. Nigeria is the largest, we have the largest number of people who use telephones and all of that. How can we leverage that, on this, in this plan?
To leverage this agreement, we need, I think I said, we need products. So first of all, I think we need to look at an industrialization policy that we have to set up. And then I still was talking that power is important for any of these things we are going to try and do.
Yeah, you have talked about that.
I know, it's a little bit I want to look at. We can also, as a country, set off like our LNG dividends, which is about 2 billion yearly. We can set it aside as a country for the next 5 years and try to ask Siemens to give us the same deal they gave to Egypt, where they, for 9 billion, they created about 15 gig of power. I think we can set that aside and say, okay, for the next 5 years, we will just dedicate the LNG dividend towards that increased capacity. Then if we come back home, because what's going to drive Nigeria being competitive is us being able to mass produce. Mass production is where you get the leverage. You have a product, you are able to mass produce it, and you send it to a particular market.
Because I know when you hear mass production,
yeah,
it always raises questions about quality.
No, yes, you have to get, we have to also sort of upgrade our standards agency, whereby we are able to say, this is the Nigerian standard. I'm
just, do you think that, I know that the ministers, I think next week Wednesday, they're about to be sworn in. Should we, I know we also do have very fantastic negotiators, world-class negotiators in this country. A couple of them are, they've been speaking up. Do we need to have a minister dedicated to this Continental Free Trade Agreement, or leave it to the Ministry of Trade? They can always do their thing as they've been doing it, to give us that sense of urgency that we need to hit the ground running on this one?
We could, the president could designate, like you have like you see in Europe where they have like a Brexit minister that was supposed to deliver something like that. I think he has a committee, but he could set up a team that is going to, with strong,
we'll go to break, but we'll be back and take a look at the data component of all of this. Yeah, I know. Join us again.
Welcome back. Now let's get to the data component of the Free Trade Area Agreement, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Now we're getting to a point where technology is driving trade all around the world. There's a 5G race, for example, between China and the United States. And we know how that has actually changed the position of America's trade relationship with China and vice versa. Now for Africa, especially for Nigeria, technology will be key for this free trade area. But in Nigeria, we're still between that 3G, 3.5G, 4G, then back and forth. And you kind of ask the question, wouldn't this affect our competitive edge in the AfCFTA? So the question is, how do we leverage this well? And do we have enough regulation, for example?
Yeah, yes, data is going to be important because conducting systems are going to be interconnected. When you talk from custom systems and everything, so you're actually going to need better data services. If you look at the African continent, very few submarine cables have really been laid around the continent. So we're going to have, there has to be a massive investment in data around the continent. And with 5G coming on stream, I think it's going to be a case, you know, you look at the case of early adopters of a technology, and it's going to be a case, first of all, of whether our regulators want to drive the market that way. Because a lot of times, tech companies, if they don't, it's going to be a massive investment for them. So if you are not requiring it or asking them to, they'll prefer to stay where they are if they are making money. If they are making money where they are.
Have we even maximized 4G, for example? Are we getting value, you know, for the, I mean, the data packages we pay for? I mean, these are questions that come up, and then we're thinking of 5G when we've not even really maximized 4G.
That's where NCC has to come in to be able to set the technical standards that we need to be able to drive 5G, to go into 5G. And then again, 5G currently, it's different. It's going to be totally different from 4G because it runs on a different bandwidth. So there's going to be investment on more base stations by the telcos if they are going to adopt it, because it doesn't propagate as wide as the 4G and the 3G which we were using before. So for that, there's going to be a huge investment about base stations to be able to build that up.
All right. Unfortunately, we can't speak about our own experiences with this 4G and this challenge we face, even with our own networks normally. But, you know, it's always a going concern. We appreciate your coming on this morning. Dr. Ricardo Obiebo-King is a tech and innovation management consultant. Well, that is it today. Well, thank you all for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. So
I am Kayode Okikiolu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning.
And I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. To have a lovely day ahead.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.